Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as the Lost. With this character, of course, we have a lot of advantages, like spectral tears and flight, and that pretty much is all the advantages that we have. The rest is literal hell. But even with these two things that we have, they're actually pretty potent, and the fact is that it does change the Lost from this very fragile character into a character that you can actually do something with. And especially with the introduction of all of these changes, I feel like the Lost has become a much more fun character to play as, and especially because of the D4, there's always that risk element that you can take if you do happen to take a wrong turn at some point. Of course, you can also use it strategically, which I think is something that I've talked about before, but overall, I do feel like the Lost has become a much better or more enjoyable character to play as overall, because he's literally the only one where you can take advantage of the rocks and the environment that exist in the rooms to maybe get a leg up on your opponents. But of course, there's always a decision to be made, especially early on in the Lost runs, and that is, do I enter that curse room or not? Usually, if you think about it, having the Holy Mantle is essentially like a free curse room pass, because you can enter, you can exit, and you're not gonna take any damage, because you have the Holy Mantle, and it resets every time you enter a room, also a curse room, which means that essentially it's free. But with the Lost, it's a bit different, because if you do happen to lose that Holy Mantle inside of the curse room, then you can't exit it, because if you do have flight, the entrances are free, and then if you want to exit, of course, you have to take damage, and with the Holy Mantle, you just wouldn't take damage, because the Holy Mantle would intercept it. But in the case if there's something like a rapid fire demon in there, or maybe just a bunch of spiders you can't deal with, and if they just happen as much to lightly touch you, they're gonna take the Holy Mantle away and you won't be able to get out without dying. So why did I do it? Why do I kind of keep repeating this same mistake over and over again? Because obviously just entering the curse room is gonna be what usually costs you the run, or at least in some cases, and if you want to reduce risk of getting as low points as possible, we probably shouldn't be doing it. And I agree, if I was actually trying to play optimally, I don't think I would ever go to the curse rooms, just because even if there's like a 1% risk, it's not worth it, because if I can just go to the boss and just go to the next floor, then I think that's already better. But as I've said in some of my previous videos, it's about taking chances and risks that I think other players wouldn't take, and then hoping that then maybe those risks and chances reward me. And in that particular case, I felt like going to the curse room might give me more benefits than the average player. Like for example, let's imagine that there was something like the dead cat in there, that would give me 9 more lives, and I would just immediately have a leg up on the competition. I could have died 8 times when someone else would just die once, and that would be over. And of course I would keep respawning as the Lost, and then I would have more chances to actually complete the daily and just have a good run overall. So I feel like for that reason, it's worth it going for the curse rooms, but you kind of have to realize as to why you're doing it. Just going there, kind of hoping to be willy-nilly and get some good items, I don't think it's that good of an idea, but going in there with the knowledge that maybe you're gonna get something that other player wouldn't, and if you realize that, then I feel like maybe that's a good reason enough to try and risk it. Of course, you can kind of mitigate some of that damage or some, I would say, unfortunate accidents that happen when you do get hit inside of the curse room, and that is just by carrying a teleport card. I can't stress this enough. If you're playing as the Lost, have a teleport card handy, because that is gonna save your run and really gonna help you out. And I'm not just saying for the curse rooms, I just mean generally. If you have anything, the Emperor card, the Hermit, or even like the one that teleports to the treasure room, the moon, whichever, if you just keep on it, and if you lose the Holy Mantle, and if you feel like you're gonna take another hit of damage, just use it, teleport out, and retry the room back again. That's why I feel like something like the deck of cards, or the starter deck, whatever it's called, is so useful, because it does allow you to essentially hold 2 cards on top of you. Of course, you always try to get cards or runes that also give you shields, so something like Algis, or maybe even the Unicorn one that makes you invincible, and with the combination of maybe Orbital, you can just clear the room that way. But of course, with all of that combined, I feel like all of those cards are so important for the Lost, and it's just very important for you to take advantage of them. And in the similar vein, I think pills can be very useful too, especially now when there are pills which give you invisibility, maybe that didn't really exist before. There's even more chances for you to get it, and because you're the Lost, you really can't suffer negative consequences from a lot of the pills. Like for example, if you do take a bad trip pill, you won't be able to die because you have the Holy Mantle. You just have to know that it's there, and you have to use it in a room where obviously you have the Holy Mantle, and you can reset it at will. And then of course we have some of the other pills that might be damaging, something like the Horf pill, but that can be mitigated as well. So I feel like if you do really know what you're doing and you know which pills effects exist, using the pills on the loss is usually a good idea. There's always a chance of something like a speed downgrade or maybe a tear downgrade pill, but in this particular scenario, if you look at it, because I have Epic Fetus, tear downgrade is not really gonna hurt me that much. A speed downgrade would be kind of bad, especially when we're gonna go against the Hush. There really won't be a good chance for me to outrun his tornadoes, because the tornado, I think you have to have something like 1.5, if not even a bit more speed. If you don't, then those tornadoes are going to catch you up and they're going to deal damage, and there's really not much you can do about that. It really depends on which side of the room they start and on which side of the room you are. If you're far away from them, you can outrun them, but if they spawn right on top of you, there's no chance for you to get away. So with all of that in mind, I feel like the Lost is a character that's really more about knowledge and positioning and just knowing how far you can go before you do something, and of course trying to use those cards and pills to your advantage to really have some periods of invisibility, or at least some periods where you can kind of reset a room and give it another chance, for example by teleporting out and coming back to it again. But of course we're not playing as the Lost anymore, and what exactly happened, because I didn't really talk about it. Well, I had the D4 on one particular floor, and there were 3 battery charges, one in the shop and 2 just laying on the floor, and I think I had 10 items in total, and I still didn't do the math on when it's optimal to actually start rerolling. I feel like that might be a good video in the future, but I just figured maybe I should just kind of risk it, because I feel like at that point I had the blank card on that exact floor, so that kind of forced me, or at least I think it forced my hand somewhat, because I want to have the blank card, because if there is a chance for me to get a Yarrow rune, then I can break the game that way. But even if I get something like an Algis rune, I would be able to use it and kind of protect myself and be invincible. And what's maybe even sadder in this story is that I did have an Algis rune on the last floor. I was trying to fight Reg Mega, and he managed to hit me once. I didn't want to risk it, so I just used the Algis rune right there and then. And of course I got the blank card on the next floor, and if I kept the Algis rune, I feel like my decisions as this character would be a bit easier, because then essentially you have 30 plus another 30 seconds of invisibility, and that's enough to really tackle even the most hard of bosses. And especially in something like Boss Rush, you would be able to kind of keep using it, and I feel like it would be even enough against Hush. Because the first 2 phases of Hush really aren't that problematic, you can kind of keep safe, and as soon as you lose the Holy Mantle and you feel like you're gonna take another hit of damage, you can pop the Algis rune, get in there, do a lot of damage, and then of course if that doesn't work, then you can use your actual Algis rune and not the blank card and do some more job with that. But yeah, in that position I was kind of forced in where I either had to decide, am I gonna keep the D4 and hope to reroll on another floor, or maybe I just won't ever reroll, or will I keep the blank card and kind of remain as the Lost? And I feel like that might be a good idea, but I really felt like my run just wasn't that strong. I felt like sure, I could go and maybe win the run this way, but there's no chance that I'm actually gonna beat Hush or even Boss Rush if I'm just remaining with the items that I have. So I felt like, okay, I'm gonna start rerolling and hoping for something good to happen, and the first 2 rerolls sucked, and the third one was a bit better, but I really didn't have a choice, because I had to stick with the third one. I didn't have more battery charges, but luckily I did get the Ankh, which allowed me to respawn as Blue Baby, so that's exactly what I did. I went into the sacrifice room, kind of sacrificed my health there, and respawned as Blue Baby, and then I wanted to use it again. I hoped that maybe there was gonna be another battery charge, but there wasn't, so I'm stuck with this run that you see now. So I have Epic Fetus with Conjoined, I think, some familiars here and there, not really a lot of damage, but because we are shooting 3 rockets at once, it's not that big of a deal. So I guess it did turn out pretty well, and we still managed to keep flight because of the Beelzebub, you know which transformation, the one that gives you flight when you pick up fly items. It's a hard word to say, okay? So when you have that, of course, we have flight, and with flight, I think it's just a bit easier to control the Epic Fetus missiles. So now that we have this run going for us, and we kind of make that risk, don't get me wrong, it was very lucky, because we essentially saw only 40 items in the rotation, and there's something like 500 items in total in the game, and maybe, the odds are that we were gonna see a respawn item, but I really did feel like that was pretty lucky. Even if it didn't do it, I still would have kept the blank card and tried to go, no, excuse me, if I didn't respawn, then I would have kept the D4 and tried to reroll into something potentially better on something like Boss Rush. In that particular scenario, we don't have the Holy Mantle anymore. We're suddenly in a position where we really can't do anything other than hope to get some really good combo by rerolling, and of course, the only way to do that would be to have a lot of rerolls. And if we didn't manage to actually get to a point where we would reroll into a respawn item, then we would have to do it on boss rush, hope that we would complete boss rush, or hope that when we died we would actually have something that would allow us to come back. So it was a run that I feel like was a bit lucky, and of course a bit in that sense of variance, and that's usually how Isaac goes, but especially with the lost runs. But at a point where I saw that I did get the Ankh, I knew that there was kind of a one run, and not maybe one run, but the prospects were looking a bit more better, and I feel like that's exactly the direction that this run went in. So at the start, I really felt like maybe this was going to be one of those runs which were going to be defined by the items that we find early on, because they were pretty good, and usually you're kind of afraid to reroll them, but later on, like I said, I felt like I needed to make a choice, because even if you have Magic Mush, even if you have double damage, that's just not enough to really carry you. We would really need something more powerful to get through that. So at the end, of course, I did keep the Judgment card, I did keep the Blank card, and what I tried to do is just spawn a bunch of them in the Secret Room, and then of course I blew them up for item pedestals. I hope maybe there was gonna be a Purge Rune which I could have used to get something better out of it, but sadly that didn't appear. But luckily enough, we did get a Forget Me Now just before the lamp fight, and of course, because it was in that obvious position, that means that everyone pretty much got it, so there's really no way to go here. But I feel like using the Forget Me Now in the Dark Room can be just equally dangerous as it can be beneficial. And the main reason for that is that the Dark Room is just an annoying place, especially with a weapon like Epic Fetus. There's so many enemies which explode, and so many cluttered rooms that sometimes you just can't hit them without hitting yourself accidentally or putting yourself in a position where you can't dodge their shots. So it's really annoying to kind of go through, and especially because you know you have to do it if you want to maximize your score. But oftentimes I find myself kind of being like at 45,000 points, resetting with the Forget Me Now, and I end with maybe like 500 points extra instead of something like 2,000. Because even if I did get 2,000 exploration bonus, I still got hit like 3 times and I lost another 1,500 points. So it's one of those things which is more of a balance thing, and of course it's always worth to do just because you have another chance of getting more points, but it really doesn't really turn out that well in the usual case scenario. So we got the 2 of Spades to kind of cover everything up, so I guess that was worth it. We pick up the trophy and of course finish at the 49,000 points on the 20th place, which is all decent, and of course our damage penalty was quite high. Our exploration bonus was a bit on the low side, even though we did get the Forget Me Now, because I was kind of forced to skip through some of the early rooms since I did try to get to Boss Rush and Harsh, because like I said, my run was a bit weaker at the start, and even if I did have that Magic Mush, it just wasn't enough to deal with rooms fast enough. And when I committed to actually re-rolling, then I lost like 3 minutes there, and that was kind of my doom, at least in terms of exploration bonus. But we still managed to complete every main objective, we managed to get to the end, and overall I would say it was an enjoyable run, even if a bit lucky. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.